All right.
And
Hello, wonderful humans. It's Ruth here from the Foot Nerd program. Welcome to another episode of Nerd Talks, where we invite foot nerds from all over the globe to unpack what it's like to live the foot nerd life and to dig into the five pillars of health, which are sleep, movement, mindfulness, community, and of course, food. And today we have with us a foot nerd from Los Angeles, um, California. His name is JJ Caballero. He's a foot nerd and also an MRI technologist. And so we want to welcome him today to the Foot Nerd Speaks, where stellar humans and foot nerds talk about what it's like to be a foot nerd. So today we're going to dig in, and should we just get going? We'll start with JJ. Maybe you'll introduce yourself a little, tell us a little bit about who you are, how you found the Foot Nerd program, and what gets you out of bed in the morning.
all right, sounds good. Hey there, everybody. Thanks for the intro, Ruth. My name's JJ, and which stands for Joseph June. And like she said, I grew up in the LA area, and I just turned 28, and more than excited to be going through my Foot Nerd program.
Should I sing
Um,
to you happy birthday, JJ?
no, it's okay. I'm good. And I'm the youngest of four boys, and I grew up playing a lot of sports and being very active. What gets me out of the bed nowadays is kind of sort of finding my path and kind of finding a way to enjoy the process of learning a little more each day. Especially with the Foot Nerd program, I kind of found out about it with Instagram with the sponsored ads maybe about 1 year ago, and I would see things that resonated really well with me. Nick kind of referenced things like tight, locked up hip flexors, and even one about how he has seen and treated power lifters and how a lot of foundation and things kind of start with the foot. And it got me very curious as I've had kind of situations with a history of ankle problems and a couple foot situations. So the more I looked into it and saw more content, I eventually got a beam at the start of January 2020. And even at the beginning, I couldn't even stay on it with my left foot, which is like my
Mhm,
weaker side. And I
mhm.
got on for about 5 seconds and was like, what is going on? And at that point, I was super intrigued. And with my stronger side, my right leg, I was doing okay. And it was really fun to stay on the beam. And at that point, I looked more into the Foot Nerd program and wanted to know like how I can get better and improve overall with my health.
Mhm. That seems like it's a common thread in how people find the Foot Nerd program, the ankle, the it seems so simple, but the ankles and the hips and especially with people who are having like chronic pain, we don't often go immediately to the foot to think about what's happening there and what's happening in the hip and
Right.
how it can be, causing so many of the obstacles that we have in moving and enjoying movement, right?
Right.
So, so one of the questions that seems to go regularly through the foot nerd community is, the definition of health has a wide spectrum, and even though I think if you hear the word health, you conjure a certain idea, but everybody actually has a different definition of health, and I wonder if you would share with us what health means to you. What is your definition of health, and maybe how you used to think of health and how it's changing? So maybe you could
Yeah.
share with us a little bit about that.
Good question. And I like how you added on at the end because prior to the Foot Nerd program, I kind of had this like broad definition of health. It would include basically like the physical, mental, and spiritual aspect of like someone's well being. And now, like my newer definition kind of has to do with the five pillars and
Hmm.
kind of just knowing that there's a lot of subcategories and a lot more that goes into those three categories or things that you didn't really think or as aware of prior to the program for me.
Hmm. So when we talk about, like in the Foot Nerd program, for those of you that might be listening for the first time, we talk about the five pillars of health as being movement, a high quality movement that's whole body, wholesome, fun movement that is mobility enhancing, that is strength building, that we reclaim this body that doesn't have to be in chronic pain all the time. Sleep, food, mindfulness, and community. And so that's what we study in the Footnerd program are the 5 pillars of health. And I was curious, so I noticed recently that when we talk about, when we invite Footnerds to speak about the 5 pillars, it seems like movement is, we get pretty well dialed in with the balance beam and unlocking like the mobility of the foot and starting to understand the ankle. And Nick often talks about like it's a very simple concept, the foot. And then food is, which we know so much about nutrition that people are, I think, have good handle on what it, learning to eat more wholesome foods.
Right.
Sleep is pretty, we know we need more sleep between 8 and 10 hours, and we try to engineer our environments in order to create a really good sleep environment. But it seems to me that recently community, especially during a pandemic,
Oh, yeah.
community is we have to be very creative and in ways that we build community. And then also mindfulness, it seems to be the 2 pillars where people have varying obstacles. And so I wonder if you would, let's start with mindfulness. Like, do you have a routine around the 5 pillars of health or anything like that
Uh,
that you go to?
Good question. And I like how the program kind of gets you into sort of practices to try and be consistent. And I haven't been consistent with my 30-day, 5-minute meditation. I would go like with streaks of maybe a few days. I got up to like 8 days and I was really proud. And then with some of the holidays and like getting busy, like you said, I was like, what happened? And then
Yeah.
so habits like reading, having some of the interest in the books that were kind of like curated to some of our common interests,
Mhm.
and habits like just being more curious to learn and actually doing things actually helped me. And prior to kind of this year, I felt like I kind of had a good sense of knowing how to be healthy, but getting more involved and being more active, I've started to learn how to actually be more healthy. And that's the very like fun part about diving into the program and being like an active participant. So that's what I found very interesting. And for me, one of the mindfulness things, just kind of learning about it, I was like, dang, this is something that kind of comes easier for me. So I feel like I've been pretty mindful and aware, but just not really connecting and just using it to my advantage, at the actual time. I kind of more of the type to like look back and reflect, or at the time I can be aware of things, but not really see what's right in front of my face, I would say.
Yeah. Well, mindfulness is interesting because so for those of you listening, we have in the Footnote program, we have different projects that we complete. And one of the projects that we complete is that JJ's talking about is 30 days of a seated 5 minutes only, which seems like it's not very much until you actually try to do it consistently, and then you miss a day and you realize, wow, I don't know how that got away from me, but just a seated 5-minute silent meditation for 5 minutes for 30 consecutive days. And for me, I've had a meditation practice for many, many years. So I initially I was going to disregard that, just check it off my list, like, oh,
Oh.
I meditate for 20 minutes, but I realized that when I actually decided to strip it all away and sit down and get quiet for 5 minutes, that it's harder than you think. And I encourage people too, like if you have like an hour-long meditation practice, to actually try the 5-minute meditation practice for 30 days straight, because what I've noticed is that um, if you're new to meditation, like JJ's talking about, it can be you don't even know, like one thing happens in your life and you've missed the day without even realizing that. Isn't that kind of true, JJ?
Right.
Or and you have
you're
to
just
start
like
over.
not too present and
Yeah, or
yeah.
you get out of your morning routine. Like in the Foot Nerd program, we talk a lot about tiny habits where you anchor a certain thing that you're trying to change in your life, a certain habit that you have, and
Mhm.
then you try to anchor that to something that you do regularly, like making coffee. One of the things it seems like Foot Nerds or whatever your morning beverage is, but it seems like Foot Nerds just really do well with that morning beverage and then doing some squats or a balance beam
Yeah.
or 5 minutes on the balance beam because you have to wait for the water to boil or you have to, and that is like a perfect
Uh,
time to hop on the beam, right? Or to do 50 squats or whatever. But the
definitely a
mindful,
good time.
yeah, and yeah, and so I was thinking like maybe a good thing to do with the 5 minute meditation is something like that. Well, instead of hopping
Oh,
on the beam, maybe you could get your water boiling, get your beverage ready, and then you do that 5 minutes. You can't take a sip of that coffee until you get those 5 minutes in.
yeah.
But
Since
the
some of the videos of the day in the life of those foot nerds, I was like
yeah.
taking some notes and I was like, oh, their morning routine's definitely really interesting and they find very creative ways to get those things in there.
Yeah, the
Uh,
morning routine seems to be a very powerful. I mean, that's another thing. It's another part of our life where I think I would naturally disregard it because I have a morning routine. I get up, I make coffee, I brush my teeth, but then incorporating some of these habits around the 5 pillars into that. I mean, the morning routine
yeah.
is an extremely powerful way to set the tone for your day, right?
Right. For me,
Yeah.
I don't drink coffee.
Mhm.
I just get out of bed, drink a glass of water,
Yeah.
and I'm up, wash my face, brush. I kind of get some movement in there before I get some food, and then I'll try to stretch and warm up a bit more and get some dynamic movements in there before my workout. So
Mhm. And
usually try
you
to,
usually do your workout before you go to work?
yeah. And then after the workout, I'll kind of just lay on my back, and that's when I was trying to get my 5+ minutes of like calming
Mhm.
meditation and getting connected back with my body.
Mhm.
And then I would like shower, eat, and then kind of relax a little bit before I go to work.
Do you get up at a certain time every day?
Usually my body wakes me up around 7:45, maybe like 8ish. Yeah.
Nice. So you don't get up with an alarm clock?
I have one on, but I always get up right before.
Yeah, that happens. And
And
how about
sorry if I'm like a little fidgety. I don't have a computer chair anymore. I just kind of
uh,
use like either my
that?
mat, which is kind of like a little bit of a foam, or have like a foam pad if I get a little tired. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
kind of switch between resting positions. I'm in like a half kneel, you can't really see,
yeah.
or I'm in like a kneeling position. So
I don't know
that's
if you'll
also
be able.
part of like a mindful practice of just like changing little things like that. I don't have a chair in my room, and I sit on the floor when I eat sometimes, especially when I get home. So
Mhm. It's funny too, right? Because you apologize for being fidgety. Because like when we go to school, we are we're kind of conditioned to sit still.
yeah.
And so I don't know if when this podcast airs, it'll be video, or
Oh, right.
if it will just be sound, you won't be able to see. But if it's video,
Okay.
you'll see JJ's head going in and out of the screen. And we encourage fidgetiness because we want to make sure that we're not sitting or staying in one static position for very long periods of time. Our joints really don't like that. So can we talk about community, JJ? Because that's the other pillar that seems when I've been interviewing new foot nerds coming into the program, we ask them like, what is the 5 pillar that gives you the most
Oh,
uh,
okay.
that you have the most resistance or that maybe needs the most work. And a lot of
Oh,
people say community. And so I was
interesting.
curious about
That's
how what's community like for you in your life?
coming from like sort of like a big family, extended family. I have some cousins I grew up with. Being the youngest, I had friends of my brothers that are always looking out for me. So playing sports, I also met a lot of people and kind of dove into a lot of different categories of communities across the board, from like athletes to then around college, I got into like the dance community, and getting involved with dancers was a very eye-opening and very beautiful thing to see, like a different type of artistry and people that move in a certain way.
Mhm.
And growing up through basketball, I also was like a referee, a coach, and a fan. So I've seen like sport through different perspectives. And always being at the gym, I've seen like the fitness community from different gyms across the valley that I live in. And it's just been very interesting to see like the way different types of people from different backgrounds and their stories and just the way that people connect and move is just like a very cool thing to be a part of. For me, community isn't like one of the ones I struggle too much with because I feel like I've been very familiar with like my hometown and the people I grew up with. I'm still
Mhm.
pretty like close with, and for me, the pillar that I struggle with is food.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm still trying to ride that ignorance is bliss train when it comes to trying to navigate through like my food like products, some of my habits that aren't as, healthy when it comes to food. Um, Knowing that I have to eat more nutritious, nutrient based foods.
Let me give
That's
give me some examples, like when we talk when I've some of the podcasts that Nick and Mike talk about, like how when they talk about food, like how they can crush a bag of cookies if it's in the house or whatever.
oh man.
So tell me, okay, so about my diet changed drastically about 20 years ago. We listened to some doctors talking about nutrient dense food when people didn't even really eat that much kale. And we listened to an interview with a doctor out of New Jersey called Dr. Joel Furman. And when we heard his talk, we just shifted overnight and everything changed. All of our blood pressure, family blood pressure changed. Everybody in the household got healthier very fast. But what we did was we took all the bags of cookies and all those things out of the house, and we still eat those things, but we if we want to eat crappy food or food that isn't maybe I try not to think about food as good or bad because I think that it's really important to have a, a good emotional relationship with food. But when I want to eat cookies and ice cream, I go out of the house and I purposely have to go get it. So if I want that, I have to really want it. It can't be something that's not a mindful process, like just mindlessly eating cookies or chips or anything in too much quantity while I'm watching television or whatever. I have to actually go out, and then I have a new appreciation for that thing. So tell me more, JJ.
Right.
Tell me more.
Thankfully, thanks to like a lot of the podcasts and the books and content through the Foot Collective and Nick and the things he's shared, like you kind of mentioned, developing that emotional relationship with food, that was like very new to me. Growing up, I just didn't really care about like aesthetics too much. So I kind of felt like as an athlete, like running all the time, I got away with eating whatever the heck I wanted.
Hmm.
Maybe around like the age of 14, I'll be playing like two or three basketball games on a Sunday, for
Hmm.
example, playing the whole game, like not really getting subbed out. So the only time I got to sit on the bench, maybe between games, or I even remember one game at halftime, I'm scarfing down some Burger King, like some chicken fries, like at halftime, and then go in the next quarter and play the rest of the game. So food, I didn't really, I knew better, but I still wanted to just explore and find out for myself, kind of like, and definitely eating a lot of like fast food and stuff. But this past year, that's something I've cut down on. And like you said, taking like the sweets and junk food out of the house has helped. Just
Hmm.
having it like out of sight, like not even thinking about it really helps.
Hmm.
But that's funny what you mentioned about Nick because I was even telling my cousin about a year ago when like years prior, we would like go to Walmart just to take trips of buying like $20 worth of snacks from like candy bars, chocolates, and just having that in like a weekend to myself kind of thing.
Yeah.
But definitely still eating like a lot of fruits and home cooked meals is been like my go-to. And thankfully, living with my parents a lot, they always cook dinner, and
Hmm.
having food at the house, like leftovers that you take
Yeah.
to work, and not always eating out when you're at work, definitely saves a lot of money as well.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to food, in my experience and over the journey of having relationship with what it means to change your diet, I think that one of the things that gets overlooked regularly is that because we live in unprecedented times where we don't have to worry about food. We have every kind of food at our fingertips, no matter what, that we have the luxury of like talking about food as like healthy or unhealthy instead of just food, right? So like one of the things I noticed when I was changing, I told my husband, my partner Matthew, that if we were going to change our the way that we eat and try to shift to a healthier lifestyle and a healthier diet, that if I felt deprived in any way, that I wasn't going to do it. Like my diet prior to that wasn't like terrible or anything, but I mean I didn't I was like, that ignorance is bliss kind of thing where you just I think I miss out on just the festivities around food where you're not always thinking about is it good for me or is it bad for me. And Dr. Lissa Rankin, she wrote a book called Mind Over Matter. She talks about the importance of feeling emotionally happy about food and life in general, and that she was out of the she was out of Marin County where like the social affluence there and the economic affluence was so great. Like people could eat the most pristine, healthy diets. They could work out. They could have all of the five pillars of health intact. But
Nice.
she's found that they were the sickest people that
Oh,
she came in contact with. And what she found through her research was that people were so unhappy that they were lacking in family connections and community, and the thing about like sitting around a table and really enjoying food, regardless of what it is, that people were so neurotic about the food that they were putting in their mouths that they were actually very ill. And so she changed her intake form, and she actually studied this population of Italians. I think they moved from Sicily. You can't quote me on this, but they moved from Sicily to Pennsylvania, I think. They were, for all intents and purposes, some of the sickest people. They should have been some of the sickest people based on like smoking and drinking and pasta eating and olives and fried food and
culture.
tons of wine and culture, right? But it turns out that in their community nobody was dying of anything but natural causes. So
Wow.
the researchers were wondering what was going on in this community. So I think they did a pretty long-term study, and what they found was that there was such a connection between neighbors and families and cousins and multi-generational families living together and eating like meals together as families and caring for each other's children, and the old people were around and they'd go to church together, that it wasn't until the young people started growing up and being sort of or moving out of their communities and living really modern lives, isolated lives where they weren't connected to family and community anymore, that they actually started to get diseases that we see now, like high blood pressures and heart disease and so on and so forth. But that what they found from that study is that food, it doesn't matter like how healthy of a lifestyle that you have if you don't have that connection that you're talking about with your friends and your family and your community and people around and you, and that we are actually more sick the more neurotic we are about the nutrient content, the nutrient densities. So I find that over the last 20 years, at first we were pretty intense about eating like only healthy foods, and then little by little we've just relaxed, and it's just how can we enjoy the moment with the people that we love, regardless if it's, I'm not encouraging Burger King, but like let's say you had the
Me
most
neither.
you were having so much fun eating your Burger King with your friends and stuff, that happiness factor is actually a very powerful predictor of health. And so I
Hmm.
think it's important for us to recognize that, you know?
Very interesting study, and I love the Italian culture, by the way, and the pastas and the partying.
I know.
And very interesting about that part of the community. Um, Growing up, like I'm in the first generation of my family, in which they came from a Filipino sort of culture and where they cook a lot of meals. And a lot of my friends that I grew up with, they kind of have more of a Western diet and lifestyle of um, eating out more often.
Mhm.
And although we do eat a lot of home cooked meals, when we started to get older and kind of like grow out of like different schedules, we wouldn't really have dinner together. So like my parents would cook the food and it would be out there. We all just kind of get it, bring it back to our room, eat alone. And
Oh,
that's very like normal for us. So it's very good when we do get together, especially for like birthdays, holidays, and when we do get together for family time. And it's not very like I mean, it is very functional and we're very cordial anytime we get together. But it was just very like very jarring how like we ate alone so often, but it was so normal. But at
yeah.
least we felt comforted that our parents cook for us and that they always kind of like help put the food on the table, kind of thing. So
Yeah. So you actually, so you're 28, so your parents cooked. Can you tell a difference like in your own well-being, like when you eat alone? I mean, like it's so great that you have parents who make food, right?
yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but that, I mean, it's so funny because like I actually get a little sad when I think about everybody going off into their separate rooms, but it is such a
Yeah,
normal thing, you know, and I
right.
see like my neighbors, we live in this condo complex. My neighbor is has a, I guess she must be like a 13 or 14-year-old, and I'm not kidding you, like the girls, and they're on the other side of us, there's a seventh grader, they never come out of their bedrooms.
Oh.
And I'm like, I just think like I know that it's normal, but I just wonder, like, can you tell a difference when you eat together? Like, do you feel different? How do you feel?
um, Being like a little, I would say, like not to like compare like too much, but being like in my head more during
Mhm.
those kind of situations and kind of being aware of certain dynamics like that, I would kind of like wonder about like, is this like sort of awkward or normal? And for us, it's cool. Like, we did it so much where um, we can either be at work by the time we get home, everyone already ate. So things like that, where it wasn't really sort of looked at down upon or
Yeah. It's just a different way of living, right? I mean, like you're
yeah,
still connected to your families. You know that the people are in their rooms eating their thing. And
yeah,
it's not something that is, I mean, it's just that you are conditioned in a different way. And it's not a thing. I think it's probably only sad to people who are older, who used to have a certain heritage, and then
right,
something changed. And so someone like you who grew up that way, you don't really miss that
yeah.
because you didn't ever really like, and you still have, it
It's
sounds like you come from a big, are you the youngest of four?
yeah, yeah. I'm the youngest, and it's cool, especially like I used to read as well. So reading about how people used to write about things about how it used to be and like how culture shift about how it's been transitioning is very cool. Like kind of living through it while I'm kind of reading about it and like kind of making connections like that is kind of fun in like a personal way. So
Yeah. So let's go back to, what is your definition of healthy?
uh, being healthy is like in the most simplest terms what I would say. And finding out that difference was very new to me. Like just recently, just difference between knowing healthy and being healthy. So
Yeah.
being healthy is very important to me, and finding that balance, like we were talking about with the five pillars between community, food, nutrition, which is like food as well, the mental health, emotional, and sleep. So just finding like a balance. I know like you can't always find like the perfect balance, but just kind of maintaining the relationship to the best of your ability within those five things.
Yeah. How many hours of sleep do you think you get a night?
I probably average around like 7,
Yeah,
give or take. It could be like 6.5 to 7.5.
yeah. And so you like to dance.
Oh yeah.
Can we talk about that? Okay, so I want to dig into like your work as an MRI tech
Uh-huh.
because your relationship to health from what we've talked about before and what you've expressed outside of this podcast is uh, the environment that you go to work in sometimes is at odds with your definition of health and your
Right.
experience within the framework of your work. So can we dive into um, first dance because you love dance, and I think it's so cool how you play basketball and other sports as well, right?
Right.
And I played basketball too, and I love to
Super.
dance too, JJ.
Nice.
And
Like
one of the
mine.
Yes. And one of the things that I love about dance is how you can see dancer-like movements in athletics. And when
Right.
I was in college, it was so awesome because I studied kinesiology, and the football team at my school had to take ballet with us.
Oh.
And it was so funny because the coach, it was like a very long time ago, but the coach was so progressive in thinking that
It's
those
good for like
movements.
their ankles and
Yeah, and you can just see though, but what you could
balance.
see when a football player or basketball player flies through the air, you could make those same biomechanical analysis and see the same movements, right?
Right, right.
So
So
what kind
that's
of
very
dance do you like?
interesting. I kind of like grew up in like the Chris Brown era, which is like hip hop and kind of that style. And when I got into dance, it was like after high school, getting into college. So around that era, it was like early 2000s, and I didn't really know too much of dance. So
Yeah.
when we started taking classes with me and my cousin, we were like, "Oh, this is dance," and it's not really just like what you see in most of the movies or shows. That would be like not that would be like common to what most people think dance is, which is easy to believe. But when you get into like studios and like the real like foundational training of like what dancers and their lifestyle and their artistry, it
Hmm.
was very eye opening. And the first time was when I dated a girl in second year of high school. I went to one of her performances, which she did ballet and very technical type of dances. And they taught a class, which was like some sort of like contemporary to a song by Usher at the time called Moving
Hmm.
Mountains. And I took the class and I very much enjoyed it. Like that slow R&B type of music is very soothing to me. And
Hmm.
that so years later when we started picking up trying to do dance, we did like the talent show at the end of our high school senior year.
Yeah.
And we before that we had like no background at all. So we're just like, let's do a dance for the talent show. And since
Is there
then me and
video
my
of that?
I think we could find that on the YouTube,
Yes, please.
yeah. I'll also have to show you like my shoe collection right around the same time. So it's very interesting the contrast of the shoes that I collected about a decade ago and
Hmm.
kind of what I've turned that into nowadays. So that'd be a cool.
What did you turn that into nowadays? What is your shoe wear? Are you moving towards a natural barefoot?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I've got a bunch of the 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 test. Oh, you're not gonna see the video, but I got some of
Oh
the
yeah, no,
test shoes
show
right
us.
here.
We might see the video.
Oh, okay, cool. I got a bunch of these. I got two for myself and a pair for all of my brothers, and then a couple of my cousins and best friends. So
How are they
I
liking them?
they're like, oh, it feels like a sock, and it's so light, and they all pretty much enjoy them. They're kind of relieved of how like freeing it is for their feet, like wearing them out. And
Yeah.
I kind of grew up collecting the Nike Dunks and SBs and some basketball shoes like Jordans, but mainly with the SBs, which are kind of popular now. It's very interesting how
Hmm.
they weren't worth as much and they're like three times the price now. So I had a bunch of those back in the day, and now I have a lot of the natural footwear, a lot of the Vivos, a couple of Guanos, and
How did you make the switch from the cushioned arch support shoe to a natural shoe? What was that transition like for you?
Very, very interesting. And um, to kind of give another example, I used to love the Chuck Taylors, like
Hmm.
especially in middle school. I would play basketball like from sixth to eighth grade, and probably in the Chuck Taylors for the majority, if not
Hmm.
like the Dunks or SBs. And those kind of like chopped off my pinky toe and like kind of stubbed my toe, and kind of that feeling of like that narrow foot kind of
Hmm.
like really resonated with me, and especially being in a basketball shoe the majority of high school, and just being in those compressed footwear is very different from when getting into the first start of the barefoot community. Very funny because my brother actually had a pair of the Vibram Five Fingers from like
Hmm.
years ago, but like back then, like what how they're saying the fad kind of went in and out, and
Hmm.
back then I wasn't really into it. Like I was still wearing like how I was saying the shoes I was into, and
Hmm.
just recently learning more about like the foundation of the foot and how footwear is a big part of it. I got my first pair of the Vivos, and I was like,
Hmm.
oh, wearing them for like a few months at work straight. I was like, there's no going back. So
Yeah.
when I started to wear some of the other shoes, it'd be uncomfortable for my like ankle after like half an hour or so. And a lot of the things they said about like wearing those work shoes and professional dress shoes, I was like, no wonder I couldn't move and dance in those shoes when I used to wear them. And it's so cool that the functional footwear is kind of diving into those variety of styles and lifestyle kind of shoes.
Yeah. Have you tried playing basketball or dance in your FC.05s?
Not yet. No, I've danced in them, but I haven't
Mhm.
been in the gym playing basketball. But
Yeah. I mean, I
I
guess
would.
like it'd be dangerous, I think, probably with other people wearing, but you know, I bought a pair of Vivo Barefoots to play tennis in.
Mm,
And then I got the FC.05s and I went out on the tennis court and after getting that feeling of like really not having anything on the upper part of my foot, I switched and I can't even like even the Vivo feels like it's constricting my foot. Now I
wow.
play a lot I haven't actually played a game. I practice tennis
Mhm.
in the FC.05s
Nice.
and it's just
You're like
so
flying out there.
it's so comfortable. I just feel like I move more cautiously. I
Mhm.
definitely don't heel strike, and there's a steep learning curve, but I can't get comfortable in my normal, like natural footwear now. So I am in between worlds when it comes to the footwear. And like for women, um, well, that's a whole other story about like
Mhm.
fashion and heels and stuff. But
Right.
so I want to talk about you. What's it like for you? I want to hear about your MRI tech.
Mhm.
I want to hear about your background in education and what brought you to the work that you're doing and
Mhm.
kind of like where you see your future going. You had expressed some interest in possibly changing the nature of your work. And I'm curious, how are you going to shift gears and what does that look like for you?
All right. Good question again. And
Mhm.
currently, I'm gonna be starting my fourth year as an MRI tech. And after high school, while I was in the community college setting, I was taking all the prerequisites for nursing initially. And I completed all the prereqs. And about at the time I was getting ready to transfer to a nursing school, I was convinced and changed kind of direction and went with MRI, as I felt like it was more for me. And thank God I did that because it really was. And the field and kind of like the job that I do is more suited for like my personality. And so it was another 2 years of MRI school, and I enjoy like the independent part about work and seeing things that I would not have been able to with any other job, I would say. Like looking at our insides and looking at a lot of spines and brains. It's very interesting to see people's
Mhm.
stories and hear like a brief thing about what they've been through, and um, certain correlations between like what's happened to them and why their body kind of looks the way that it is. And it made me way more aware of like, oh, like I want to be more healthy when I'm older in age. So the transition from being in the medical field, like I know I'm only kind of starting for most people, I didn't really want to see myself doing it for ever. And at maybe at most, I can see myself investing like part time or working part time with the MRI tech job. It'd be fun to do it like on the weekends or a few days out of the week, but I would like to invest helping more people in a different way on trying to be healthy and giving my time of service more to maybe like the fitness industry and helping people on like a personal training or like a conscious coaching type of vibe or like a movement
Mm-hmm.
coach. So I just built like a home gym in my garage. So sort of like a private sector of like trying to develop and help start people's foundations and kind of at that ground level kind of
Hmm.
thing to where they can build and learn to be strong enough and be independent and kind of do their own thing or just take what they can learn and just me sharing what I've learned to help me along the way. So maybe from getting out of the MRI job, I can see myself doing it maybe a little longer and then hopefully telling them that I only want to be it part time and while I'm working on my skills and licenses for, like I said, personal training or
Hmm.
that kind of coaching setting. I think in the future, when I just became an uncle, so maybe when the
Oh,
kids get older, I'll get back into coaching. I
congratulations.
thank you. I used to coach a few basketball teams in the club setting, and
Mhm.
I was like, oh, maybe I'll wait till I have kids again, or until I become an uncle, or when they get older. But
Yeah. So
um,
I have a question for you. So you work, I'm always interested in people who are actually working in the, sick care system, if you will. But so I'm interested in if you see a possibility to continue working in your field and being able to use that platform as an MRI tech or whatever it is that you're doing,
mhm.
as a way to kind of infiltrate a new way of thinking about health. Do you know what I'm saying?
I definitely think, and I was like going through this scenario in my mind of like kind of helping and being someone from like from the inside, like
Hmm.
inside kind of information of things that I feel like really do benefit from working in the medical field. I can see how like doctors use like studies and certain stories to kind of document treatment plans and such. But I do think yes, as far as like HIPAA and privacy is complied with. Yes, I feel like I could help in certain
Well,
ways.
and I guess I should clarify because I remember that you wrote in a post that we read in our community about
Mhm,
how, doctors and people who are in your profession have problems with foot pain and knee pain and hip
mhm,
pain, and then you are an MRI tech, and so um, you see like a discrepancy or a
uh,
contradiction in like you actually have something to offer with your education and how you apply health in your own life.
right,
But so the clarification would be not necessarily like the patients that you see, but the health pros, the doctors and the nurses and the other, like, I wonder if you could be a resource in your own medical field communities. You know what I'm saying?
right. I feel like the angle I would take would be different. Like if I'm still in the field, I would be very general. Like, of course, when I see a patient in clinicals, I say, "Oh, we just take the pictures. We don't know anything. We just send them to the doctor."
Oh,
And then, well, we can't say anything. Like
right,
it's
of
just
course, of
health
course.
information, and we're just like, oh, just the photographers. Like, sorry, you gotta talk to your doctors. Like that's why they want to speak to you. They'll go over it with you.
Hmm.
So, but it's very interesting when you see patterns, and we have like little discussions. Excuse me. Like when we go over things with our radiologists, and when they help us look at things, and like you said, with our education, we can kind of make little general connections with some of the like more clear, easier things to see. Of course, like one of the very like particular, specific, very like advanced stuff, we can't really make those connections. But some of the very common things, like the sort of like chronic pains that we learn about that kind of generally relate to like the foot, low back,
Mhm.
knees, hamstrings, and stuff. I feel like a lot of the stuff I've been learning about is the same stuff I'm seeing like every day, and it's just like I'm like, yep. But I'm just kind of like staying quiet. But I'm just like, how can I just help these people? Or it's like I know they want to know more than just knowing,
Yeah.
and then you see these routine like runarounds and these cycles of them going to their doctors, and these things take time, like a process between the point of like how you're feeling, when you schedule your exam, the amount of time it takes to get that authorization and everything processed. By the time you see the MRI technique, it's like been a month or so. And then I'm
Uh-huh.
getting your history. And by the time you see your doctor, it's like it's been like a weeks between that time.
Yeah.
So it's like it's very weird how certain cases go, and how like for example for back pain, like some of them get treated with physical therapy or get surgeries before certain radiologists and doctors even take a look at an MRI. So it's just kind of weird
Wow.
how like people will get funneled towards those, like even for example like the foot surgeries and those crazy like seeing bunion surgeries and kind of like fragmented like anatomy and
Hmm.
toes that aren't all there. That's kind of like eye opening. You're like, you wouldn't want to see any of your relatives or loved ones go through that. If you feel like there's ways that you can help, try to prevent that, and
Yeah.
kind of just like, I would be more of service and happy to help in that way without, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, that's interesting. So we're going to start to close in on the end of our conversation, JJ. And I like to ask this question. So, so if you had the attention of the entire world for the next few minutes, like undivided attention,
Mhm.
and you were able to make a public announcement, a public service announcement, what would you say to your adoring public about health?
Very clever the way you wrote that one. I agree with what I've learned from Nick, that health is a team sport, and be about to like a lifelong journey is that the process is very enjoyable, and you can't really get caught up in some small things because it's like almost never too late to start making better decisions. So that's my little 2 cents.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Your adoring fans are going wild right now. They're like,
Thank you so
yes,
much
we
for having me, Ruth. This is an awesome like first time experience for me, and thanks
yeah,
for
well,
sharing that
thank
with
you.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know I kind of sprung this on you right before we started recording, but let's tell jokes. I'll tell you one first,
All right.
and then you tell me one. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
What do you call a mushroom that buys a round of drinks?
I don't recall.
A fun guy to be with.
I haven't heard that one. Clever. Mine's a little tricky if it's just audio. Kind of haven't told this one not in person, but I do
Let's give
have
it a
one
go.
joke. It's all about the delivery anyway, so here we go. What is the favorite? Oh, hold on. I have to regroup. Hold on.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. What is the pirate's favorite letter?
The
You would
pirates.
think it's the R, but it's the C. So
That's hilarious.
usually I like try to cut off the person and I raise my volume somewhat like that, but while they're thinking. But
Yeah.
I got a
Here's
little nervous.
that's the best part. Listen, my husband always says this to me. Okay, are you ready? I got one more.
Mhm. Gave it to me.
Do you know what the secret of life is? Timing.
Oh, that's a keeper. That's got to be
That's
a classic.
okay.
Oh man,
All right. Well, let's
comedic time.
yeah, let's wrap this comedy show up. So, just want to thank you so much for joining us today and unpacking your nerd life a little bit.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And
And I got to do one of those day in the life projects. That looked really fun.
yeah, I hope you do. We're starting to
Yeah.
get more people, more nerds coming out of the woodwork asking to do that. So let's
Nice.
definitely get yours up on the YouTube channel and on
Cool.
Instagram. And I just want to say, in conclusion, if you're listening, that if you have any interest in learning more about our Foot Nerd program, there's so many wonderful humans like JJ and so many others that are um, coming together in community and learning about the 5 pillars of health. And if you have questions, you can email us at nerdhelperteam@gmail.com, or you can go to the website at the Foot Collective, www.thefootcollective.com, to learn more. And we thank you for joining us, and we hope you will see you again real soon.
Thanks again so much, Ruth.
All right,
Let me
JJ, have a great day.
let me know if there's more of us around the SoCal area. It's kind of lonely out here right now, so I know it's
Oh,
kind of new
yeah,
still, but
I
keep
definitely
me
will.
posted.
There are other foot nerds
I
out there.
know
We'll
they're
put you in
starting to,
touch.
yeah. All right,
All right,
cool.
you take it
Thanks.
easy.
You
Bye,
too.
JJ.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too.